For years, you asked yourself, how do I save more money? But now it's, how do I preserve my money? Someone's asking the right questions. And at Sandy Spring Trust, we'll answer them one-on-one. From asset management to legacy and estate planning, you can feel confident in what's to come. What's your next financial destination? Visit sandyspringbank.com/wealth. Wealth and insurance products are not FDIC insured, not guaranteed, and may lose value. Wealth products offered by Sandy Spring Trust, a division of Sandy Spring Bank.
Alan Schroeder may be an expert on presidential debates, but he found out the same way you did, that President Joe Biden and Donald Trump would be going toe-to-toe in two nationally televised sparring sessions this year.
Donald Trump lost two debates to me in 2020.
He caught Biden's video.
Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
The video, I almost wish he hadn't done it.
This video dropped on Wednesday morning.
I didn't think it was a particularly dignified way to do this, but hey, what can I say? I'm old school.
You think he looked goofy?
Yeah, I didn't think it was necessary.
One thing that surprised Alan about the way all this went down was the speed of it. Within hours, there was a whole plan in place. First, a debate on CNN in June, then another in September on ABC. And these debates, they were arranged by the campaigns themselves, snubbing the nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates entirely. Before last week, Biden hadn't committed to any debates. There had even been people who thought maybe this year the candidates would simply skip debating altogether. For the record, Alan was not one of those people.
I've always thought that there would be at least one for the following reason, that you have two candidates who are fairly evenly matched in the poll standings. When you have a candidate who's so far in front of the other, that candidate can conceivably shirk debating. That's what happened between 1960 and 1976 when there were no debates. So I always thought there would be one this year simply because neither Biden nor Trump could afford to get out of it.
They're too close.
They're too close. And I think at this point, because we have had at least one debate in every presidential election cycle since 1976, at this point, debates are an expectation. I always use the analogy of the job interview. And so, if I'm doing a job interview and the applicant says, I don't think I'm going to show up, you just should give me the job anyway, that's not going to play very well.
It's funny, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden seem to be acting like they are raring for a fight. Are either of these two really this hyped to debate?
No. I think if they could form a secret pact to get out of it, that would be their first preference. And, the sort of dirty little secret of presidential debates is that the candidates and the campaigns really don't want to do them. If you think about what presidential campaigns are, they're all about control. They're all about choreography, staying on message. You get into a debate, you have no idea what's going to happen. And history has shown us over and over again that even candidates who are very practiced in public speaking and being in the media have these moments where things just really fall apart for them.
Today on the show, how the presidential debate, against all odds, is surviving, even thriving. For now. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. Hey, everyone. I want to tell you about a sale that's going on right now, specifically a sale at Burrow, the furniture company that is sponsoring this very show you are listening to. Burrow makes beautiful modern furniture that you can assemble at home. But their pieces, they feel nothing like the other furniture you have assembled at home. I know this because Burrow let me try out some of their outdoor furniture, and it is gorgeous. It's way sturdier than what I had before. It's made of teak. Within a couple of hours, I had assembled everything and given my deck a whole new lease on life. Here's the thing. During Burrow's Memorial Day sale, you can save up to 30% off both indoor and outdoor seating. If you need something for the dining room or a dresser for your bedroom, the sale covers that stuff too. So check out Burrow's Memorial Day sale and all their incredible furniture at burrow.com. Additionally, you can go to burrow.com/whatnext to get 15% off full-priced items. That's burrow.com/whatnext for 15% off full-price Burrow items. burrow.com/whatnext. burrow.com/whatnext. Can you give me a little historical context on presidential debates? Because I think a lot of my listeners will just assume they've been around forever, but have they?
No, they haven't. They're a creature of the television age. The three broadcast networks at the time in 1960 were looking to do something to sort of dignify television, which had become a medium of game shows and westerns and I Love Lucy, and nobody was really taking it very seriously. So their motivation was to use the medium for something more substantial. So 1960, there were 4 debates between Kennedy and Nixon, 1 hour each, all in studio, no live audience, no vice presidential debate.
These were famously the debates where Nixon was like sweating, right?
Yes. In the first debate, he had been recently released from the hospital and he had lost a lot of weight. He looked terrible and he was a sweater. And you get him under hot TV lights and his perspiration was, quite apparent as well as just his sickly demeanor. After that, they put him on what they called a milkshake diet so that, he just fattened up a little bit, didn't look quite so wan.
Well, you can see why no presidential candidate would want to do it again after witnessing just how poorly Nixon seemed to do in those debates.
Yeah, precisely. And that was the commentary at the time. After the 1960 debates, particularly in the political world, everybody just said, oh, well, that was interesting, but nobody's ever going to do it again. The reason it started again actually has kind of a parallel to what happened with Biden and Trump this year. It was Gerald Ford. He had become president after Nixon had to resign, and he was not doing so well in the polls against Jimmy Carter. So at the Republican convention in 1976, he issued this dramatic, unexpected challenge, much like Biden did, to his opponent to resume presidential debates. And we've had them ever since.
Huh. Who usually runs the presidential debates?
This is a very interesting question because it was the broadcast networks in 1960. Then for the next 4 or so rounds, it was the League of Women Voters. But the League of Women Voters were really just being run roughshod over by the campaigns. So an initially bipartisan commission, which then evolved into a nonpartisan commission called the Commission on Presidential Debates, took over the organization and the sponsorship of debates in 1988 and had done all of them up through 2020, and we're expecting to do 3 debates this year in 2024. They appear to have been cut out of the process unceremoniously.
This year, you mean?
This year.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's interesting. There's always been this push and pull between the presidential candidates and the people in charge of the debate formats. It's kind of amazing the Commission on Presidential Debates lasted this long. Can you just lay out the criticisms of the commission? Specifically, because I think it was the Republicans first who started saying, this commission is not doing what we want it to do. And they actually pulled out of the commission, right?
Right. The candidates feel that it's too important to them and their objectives to turn over a big chunk of their campaign schedule, especially late in the campaign, to an outside entity. The campaigns are all about controlling everything. And so when they got to the commission debates, a lot of the decision-making, most of the decision-making had already taken place. The schedule, the length, the format, the topics, the moderators. And that drove them crazy on both sides. So yes, the Republicans were the first ones to come right out and say, at the behest of Trump, really, that there was something wrong here. But the Democrats, frankly, are just as happy to see it go. I would add one more criticism of the commission that didn't necessarily come from the candidates, but that has been waged against them over the years, and that is their corporate sponsorship, that they depended pretty heavily on corporate sponsors because they weren't getting any tax money.
Other complaints about the Commission on Presidential Debates came up last election cycle. Back then, the Trump campaign complained that with so much pandemic-era voting happening by mail, many people would have cast a vote before they could even watch a debate. The Biden campaign had their gripes, too.
The Biden campaign complained because the COVID protocols weren't being observed. That wasn't exactly the commission's fault. And they also complained because Trump was so voluble and interrupted so much during the first debate. But the commission did respond to that in the subsequent debate in 2020 by cutting off the microphone of whoever was not speaking. So I don't know. I think the politicians all along have been trying to get rid of the commission. They want to take it back. They want to be able to throw their weight around the way they used to do with the League of Women Voters, and they seem to have achieved that goal of theirs.
Yeah, what are Biden and Trump going to get by organizing their own debates directly this year?
Well, they're going to have a lot of headaches that they hadn't anticipated, I would say, because everything is a fight. They think that they'll be able just to sort of sit down and hammer this thing out. But, already you're seeing, some sort of backsliding on some of the critical details, such as whether to include a live audience in the debates. The commission debates always had a live audience. They were always done on college campuses. And we have to go all the way back to 1960 to find debates in which there was no live audience. But that's what the Biden people want, because they know, that Trump tends to play to the crowd.
Well, you see what happened at the town hall with Trump that CNN hosted a little while back, where the crowd really seemed to root for him and root against the moderator.
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
And it just looked terrible.
Right. And that is, I think, a very legitimate complaint. And if I had one, sort of criticism of the commission debates, I would say that's it, that, they really should not have live audiences. The debate commission was dependent on corporate sponsorship. And so they used a lot of those seats in the audience to sort of reward their donors. So there was a practical reason that they did them. But I think, especially these days, when everybody has taken sides and everybody feels that they have the right to be super raucous and unruly, that it's not a great idea.
Huh. So is the Commission on Presidential Debates essentially dead now? What is that group doing?
They were really caught blindsided by this. And here's the thing is they've had their plan in the works for a long time. They did their site selection, and some of those venues have already invested money in infrastructure because it's a big deal. It's a big deal to bring presidential candidates. You can imagine the security and the requirements for the media that cover the debates. It's, I've been on the locations, and it's just this sort of instant tent city that springs up around the debates. And so, it's a complicated thing. And I feel like the commission really did get blindsided. They did not see this coming. And I think they're all just kind of walking around in a stupor at the moment.
After the break, who exactly needs these debates?
I'm Jerusalem Demsis. I'm a writer at The Atlantic. And my beat, in many ways, is to challenge the conventional wisdom. I've written about how the problem with local democracy might just be too much voting, about how some environmental laws actually squash green energy development, and about how maybe the big demographic question of the day isn't overpopulation, but underpopulation. My new show is called Good on Paper. It questions what we really know about popular narratives with a new guest every Tuesday. Find and follow Good on Paper from The Atlantic, wherever you get your podcasts.
One weird thing about the fact that these debates are going down at all, and that the candidates seem so eager to go to do them, is that both Biden and Trump have seemed content to avoid political confrontation until recently. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Like, a lot of people remember that Trump basically opted to skip the Republican primary debates entirely, and in fact had alternative events lined up for those debate nights. Is that usual? Like, when that happened, did you take note of it?
I took note of it, but I also understood it. And I think as political strategy, Trump's evasion of the primary debates made sense because he was always a lock. He was always a lock for the nomination. And because of their riskiness, if you don't have to do it, you don't do it. It was a rare moment where I think he listened to his advisors rather than his instincts because, we know he loves to perform. He loves to be on TV. He loves to use the debates as sort of, reality TV trash talking things. And yet he didn't. And why didn't he? Because there would have been absolutely no political gain and a lot of political downside to his having done so.
Then we have Biden. In January, February, I clocked that there was a whole lot of talk about maybe Biden should not debate Trump at all. Like, just don't give him the airtime. And this wasn't a new argument. Like, Nancy Pelosi had suggested as much back in 2020.
I wouldn't legitimize a conversation with him, nor a debate in terms of the presidency of the United States. Now, I know that the Biden campaign thinks in a different way about this, but I thought what he did in the 2016 was disgraceful, stalking Hillary.
What do you think changed Biden's mind?
I think that the Biden people looked at the polls and realized, we're kind of stuck here. Nothing that we're doing or saying seems to be breaking the logjam. And that in combination with just the, as I said, expectation on the part of voters that debates will be part of the process, I think they ultimately realized, we can't get out of this. And so this idea that he would never have debated Trump, it just didn't seem realistic to me. It also would have reinforced one of his problems, which is that people say, oh, he's not up to the job, he's too old, they have to sort of hide him from the public. And so to not have debated would only have fed that storyline.
Yeah, who do you think these debates could end up benefiting more, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Well, Trump actually, after his poll standings went down after the first debate in 2020 because he was so sort of out of control. And that's the kind of thing that can happen. A bad performance can lead to, it's usually only a temporary dip. And so who would benefit more? It's so hard to say because there's so many variables. And you always have to remember it's live TV and there's no script. And who the hell knows who's going to say what at any given point, or whether the roof is going to collapse or God knows what.
When I was reading around about these debates, I saw this column by Jack Shaver over at Politico that made me feel really seen, but maybe not in the best way. It basically posited the only people who care about these debates really, or have anything invested in them, are political journalists, people like you and me. Like, we're the most excited for this, especially in a year like this when everyone knows these candidates so well. It would be so uncommon if something that happened at this debate actually changed how someone felt about Donald Trump or Joe Biden.
Right. And I think, as a general comment about presidential debates, they don't tend to change the outcome of an election. Now, I would take issue a little bit with the idea that the only people who care about them are political journalists, because if that were the case, you wouldn't have 85 million people tuning in, and you wouldn't have people talking about it at work the next day. And there has been quite a bit of academic research on how people watch debates and what they get from them. And yeah, a lot of it is spectacle, and a lot of it is, you're hoping that there's a car crash that, is exciting or whatever. But it does serve an informational purpose. And as I say, maybe it doesn't change the way people vote. It can certainly reinforce, it can enthuse somebody who maybe was tepid about voting in the first place, a good performance. Yeah, I'm going to get behind that guy. I want to go vote for him. So I do think that they matter, maybe not as determinative of the outcome of elections, but I think they're a way to engage voters who don't care and normally don't pay any attention to politics. And that makes them worthwhile and unusual.
I think you're making the case that these debates matter, but they matter for like a very limited set of people, like the 100,000 people out there who are really going to make the difference in one swing state or something like that.
Yeah, well, they definitely matter in that sense. I think they matter. They matter in a couple of other ways. I think they matter symbolically. They're a sign, an indication of a healthy democracy. When we think about the international perspective, the people who don't debate are the dictators because they don't want to be held accountable. So the fact that we have debates and have had them for so long is a good thing, I think, just as a symbol of the health of our democracy. And if they went away, that would have, indicated to the entire world that, things are not happening the way they normally do in the U.S. And I think, again, if we use the analogy of job interview, it's important to have that opportunity. And it's important that the voters get to sort of sit there and make an assessment apart from what they're told by the media, apart what they're told by the advertising, apart from the social media efforts of the campaigns themselves. So that's the only shot we get. And it's too important to just blow off.
We talked a little bit about the rules of the debate and how those are still being negotiated. I'm kind of curious how granular you think those will get. Because in this particular set of circumstances, we have at least one candidate who's saying incredibly inflammatory things, xenophobic things, racist things. Like, how controllable will that be in the debate format?
I don't think you ever want to censor content that is being spoken live by potential presidents of the United States. Their words, even though they're repugnant in some cases, are part of who they are and part of our formulation as voters as to how we want to regard them. So I don't think, I think the right thing in that situation is for the opponent to point out the repugnance of the remarks and to remind viewers why that is not something that should be said in public. But I don't think you ever want to put a muzzle on candidates based on the offensiveness of their remarks.
I think over the last year, most people in the media have learned the peril of what happens when you have a live event with Donald Trump, which is he lies. And he lies repeatedly. And it's almost impossible to stop him from lying. Probably is impossible. I guess I wonder how you think that should factor into these debates. Because they will be live, as far as we know.
One of the big controversies surrounding debates, especially in recent years, has been this question of fact-checking candidates who blatantly lie during the debate. Because as a live event, it's pretty easy to hijack that. So the moderators have tried, and they usually get very heavily criticized for trying to fact check in real time. The opponents, I think, are a more appropriate way of fact checking. You know, if Trump says something that's ridiculously false, then Biden, you know, who has the microphone, is the appropriate one to point that out. But I think there's also a huge role for the media in covering debates to make sure that any of these falsehoods are pointed out as such. Now, it does not have the same impact as the falsehood being stated live in real time, but at least anybody who cares to look for the truth can find it. But we sort of live in this post-truth world. At least part of this world, part of our world is post-truth, and we're going to be dealing not just with Trump, but with a lot of candidates who have this way of operating. And yeah, we probably do need to come up with a better mechanism for calling it out. But I don't know that you can or should censor things that are being said that are part of who that person is and how they're presenting themselves to the public.
Alan Schroeder, I'm really grateful for your time and all your research.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mary.
Alan Schroeder is a professor at Northeastern University's School of Journalism. He's also the author of Presidential Debates, Risky Business on the Campaign Trail. And that's our show. If you're a fan of What Next, the best way to support our work is to join Slate Plus. Going over to slate.com/whatnextplus to find out how. What Next is produced by Paige Osborne, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.